For this video's review, I will be talking about The Wolfman. This is the 2010 remake of the 1941 classic, which I also reviewed for 31 Days of Horror this month. This is directed by Joe Johnston, director of such films as Jumanji, Jurassic Park 3, and Captain America, the first Avenger. So definitely, I would say an outside-the-box choice. Like, he wouldn't be the first person that you'd say, hey, Wolfman remake, how about Jumanji guy? No, not necessarily, but, I'd say he was up for the task for this film. Namely, what it really has going for it is the tremendous cast. What a cast we have here. We have Benicio del Toro in the role of John Talbot, originally occupied, of course, famously Lon Chaney Jr. He's also a choice that you wouldn't necessarily would say is, the absolute first thing that comes to your mind, but he proves to be absolutely perfect in this role. Absolutely perfect. Also perfect, Anthony Hopkins, playing John Talbot, Lawrence's father. You don't need to be a casting agent to see that, Anthony Hopkins can do a role like this in his sleep, which he does a great job here. We have Emily Blunt, Hugo Weaving, great in their roles as well. So definitely it's a good cast that they have going for it, and I would say it's a fair enough remake. Like, it obviously gets the basic story down. Werewolf possession, bitten by a werewolf, silver bullet, all that kind of stuff. I guess that aspect too, right? But it makes it a grander vision. It has a lot moodier of an atmosphere, I would say. Very lavish gothic sets, which I really love. So it's a very moody film, and the actors in their roles, they are able to occupy this mood in a great way. So they really sell it, I think. They expand on the story quite a bit more. Like I mentioned in the Wolfman review, that movie's like an hour and 10 minutes. This is, well, depending on the version you watch. There is the theatrical cut and the unrated cut. I don't know why they call it. They should just call it like the director's cut, which is more of what it is instead of like an unrated cut, because it is an extended version of the movie. It runs like maybe 20 minutes longer. Theatrical is maybe just under 2 hours or so, and I would say the director's cut or the unrated cut, whatever, goes a little bit over 2 hours, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen both and kind of compared both. It's hard to say which version is better. I mean, the unrated cut allows a little bit more breathing room, has a little bit more scenes of character development, but that's almost part of the problem with the movie. Like, they do try for character development, but it's not done in the best possible kind of way. The movie does kind of lag, so there are scenes with characters interacting and talking about their pasts and things like that, but it ultimately doesn't amount to too much, or as much as the intended effect would be, I would imagine. So I do like how they kind of played upon the father and son relationship a lot more in this version, because they have more time to, they have more opportunity to. And they have, the whole subplot with the Hugo Weaving character, the detective. Oddly enough, while there is a love story, it's actually, funnily enough, not as well done as in the original movie. Like, Emily Blunt, bless her, but she's not given that much to work with, to be perfectly honest. So there's that. So there are some problems with the movie. I would say that there are sections of this movie, there are passages of this movie that are exquisite, that are absolutely brilliant, that I love. Namely, like, kind of once there is the first transformation, that whole kind of chapter of the film where he's brought to the asylum and he's chained up, he's waterboarded, things like that. And then there is the transformation in front of all the doctors and stuff. That was an intense and great scene. So that whole section of the film, especially with like his delusions and his dreams, I thought was so brilliant. And we're rewarded with kind of the earlier scenes that kind of lag a little bit, because they establish the character. So when he has a dream about his mother, they've established that. So it's fair enough in that. It's a mixed bag, for sure. Like, there are sections of this movie that I think are brilliant, but I would say the middle part of the film is the best, and kind of lags into this kind of silly face off at the end between father and son, which it's okay, but it ends up being kind of silly. Makeup in the movie is excellent, Oscar winning from Rick Baker and Company. Also did American Werewolf in London, so out of two werewolf movies to win an Oscar for makeup. IMDb told me that. Thanks. There's that. CGI, on the other hand, could have used some work. Very unhappy with some of the CGI, which seems to be a theme in Joe Johnston's movies. So keep this guy away from CGI, except for Captain America, where it was minimalized. There's that. Kind of what struck me is that this movie is rated R, and it has some really fantastic scenes of werewolf carnage. There's limbs being torn off, heads being torn off, blood spraying, things like that. But I would almost think, I don't know exactly how they calculate it. If the executives are like, okay, so we're going to make this rated R, we're going to have the blood and stuff, but if we were PG-13, we would have made so-and-so percent more money, so we have to limit the budget. If, say, they would have made this PG-13 and allowed for a higher budget to make the effects better, I actually wouldn't have minded if it were rated PG-13, if the effects were better, if that makes sense. But, again, at the same time, it's cool to have an R-rated werewolf movie, but throw a rock and you can find a better R-rated werewolf movie, the Howling, American Werewolf in London. So there's all that to consider as well. But as it stands, I think it's a fair remake. There are aspects of it that I think improve upon the original work, which, as I mentioned, in my original review, I wouldn't say, well, it is a classic. I would say The Wolfman isn't a masterpiece. It's not a great film, but it has a lot to love about it, and a lot that it's contributed to, wolf folklore as we know it. So, it definitely has its place. So this is a fair enough attempt at a remake. I think it does a good job. And I think it's worth revisiting every now and again because, you may not like it the first time, but I think it's worth a second go, which I just recently watched it again, and I quite enjoyed it. Again, I thought there are sections of this movie that are absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But it's an imperfect movie, so kind of have to take the good with the bad with this one. So that's my review of The Wolfman. Loved Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. Loved the makeup effects. Loved the set design, the gothic atmosphere. So I'd say ultimately it's a good movie and it's worth watching. So that'll be it for today. Stay tuned for more 31 Days of Horror review. Until then, thanks for watching.